A sound is a channel of water which is larger than a strait, deeper than a bight, and wider than a fjord. Growing up, I heard many stories about the origins of the word sound, that it came from the English, meaning water, or the German, meaning the sea, but the one I liked best was the story where its root lay in the Old Norse, sunt, which means to swim, and that a sound was a body of water narrow enough for a man to swim across. So it is this alone which determines its size and its shifting limits. There can be as many sounds as there are distances that people can swim. Now, I'm not a linguist. I'm a police officer, and the evidence is long buried, so I don't know which story is true. All I do know is that the channel of water between the Oslo shoreline and the island of Oscarsborg wasn't a sound for the man who was discovered today. He didn't swim across it at all. I think he was killed in it.
He was draped over one of the battery guns just at the south end of the fortress. The woman who found him believes he was arranged over the gun to make some kind of political point. And that's just how she called it in. I think she's quite pleased with her pet theory. Everyone's Wallander, aren't they, Mikkel? I'll leave the island to myself. It's too early for the tourists, but I'm going to close off the harbour anyway. Okay? How are you feeling?
My name is Annika Stranded, and that's the name I croaked into the telephone when I got the call at 6 this morning in my apartment. I was in the middle of a dream about one of the officers from the reindeer police. It was kind of a confusing dream, actually, as the guy turned into an actual reindeer halfway through, and then grew some antlers, which I asked if I could touch as they looked new and velvety, but he trotted off. I should probably talk to my analyst about that, but I suspect she will make a note about the antlers in her little book and underline it like she's found something significant about my father issue or my stunted love life, so I may just let it slide. Either way, half an hour after the call, I was in my boat and skimming across the Oslo fjord, the wheel in one hand, a coffee in the other. It's the best boat in water patrol. It's ocean class. It's propelled by surface steam. It's 11 metres long and it has a top speed of 100 knots in the flat water, although it was very choppy on that windy October morning, and so I couldn't open her up as much as I'd have liked. The boat has room for 6 passengers, but for that trip, I only had Mikkel, the forensic photographer, for company. And he didn't say very much. I think he was seasick.
So, Mikkel, do you know any of the guys in the reindeer police? They came over to give us a talk about the work they do up in Nord-Troms. And there was that funny story about how they stopped a guy who had 5 reindeer in his car. You remember? The policeman telling the story was kind of good-looking, in my opinion, anyway. What do you think? Did you talk to him afterwards? Do you know if he's seeing anyone? Oh, okay, don't worry. You just take some deep breaths. It's fine, I know, it's bumpy. We can clean that up later. You didn't get any on your camera, did you?
My father ran a fishing fleet in Austevoll in the west of Norway, and it seemed to me that growing up, I spent more time on boats than on dry land. As a child, I would sail with him so he could teach me how to read the sea and the wind. But then as a teenager, I would go out alone, into the North Sea or between some of the 700 islands on the archipelago. And it could have been the journey for me. A life trading in the ocean, harvesting it for fish, like my dad, or maybe oil, like my uncle. But one summer, I had my little boat stolen from the jetty at the bottom of the garden, and my father told me I'd tied it up badly and it had probably drifted off and would turn up again on the next tide. But it didn't turn up. So I hunted for it on my own, and I asked questions and knocked on doors, and I made my father furious with this until I tracked down my boat to a house on another island where a man had repainted it. When I confronted him, he claimed I was making outrageous accusations, and he threatened to throw me off his property if I came back. But I did come back, in the night, and I scratched the paint away, and underneath saw the name I'd given her. Stanhafti. And so I cut her free and sailed her away and back to my house and didn't sleep that night from my success. The next morning, I announced I was sick of fish and the island, and I would be applying to the police university in Oslo. My father hasn't talked to me since. The victim is a white male, early to mid-30s. Ethnography is European but not Scandinavian. His eyes are open, he is without clothes, and though his skin is white-blue from the cold, and from being dead, of course, there is no sign of visible trauma to his body. I can see no blood either on his body, nor the floor, nor around the gun over which his body is slumped. He has one hand laid across the length of the turret, as if gesturing out into the sound. These are my initial observations at 7:20 on October the 15th, 2012. Okay, Mikkel, I'll leave you to finish up. I'll talk to the woman who found him. Oscarsborg Festning is a coastal fortress situated on a little islet at the mouth of the Oslo fjord. It's been the natural naval defence point for Oslo since the 1600s and was used in both world wars, but most famously during the German invasion in 1940. Oscarsborg's torpedo guns, over which today's victim is lying, repelled the German cruiser, the Blücher, as it attempted to capture the city. The reason that I, a fisherman's daughter from Austevoll, know all this is because the woman who found the body gave me a very long and detailed history lesson about Oslo's proud and defiant resistance to the invading forces, and she felt that this was what the murderer was trying to express. Hers was one of the many theories offered to me not only by those connected to the case, but by journalists and also the public generally, many of whom were looking to wring their hands about Norway's tension with its diverse population. And my own officers weren't immune to dumb theories too. Mikkel even thought it was suicide.
The cause of death was drowning. This is my point, Mikkel. This is why you should stick to photography. No one drowns themselves and then artfully arranges themselves over a gun to make a point. So anyway, let me tell you about my father. Hey, where are you going? Are you still sick? Beer is good for the stomach. Come on. It's my birthday.
Everyone drinks in Norway. Or perhaps everyone I know does. And when we get together to do it, we talk a lot. And normally I like it. Overhearing conversations around me, debates, jokes, gossip, but in that pub, snug and with the fire crackling in the corner, all I could hear was speculation about the body pointing out to sea, and how this idea that Norway is the best country in the world to live in ignores its hidden wounds, its fear, its guilt. And I didn't want to add to it. I just wanted to talk to Mikkel about how I hadn't got a birthday card from my dad. I was just checking out your son's apartment. I didn't realise you would be here. I know this is such a difficult time, so soon after the tragedy. It's hard for anyone to talk about it, especially the father. I don't have children myself, but I would think that they're always your little babies, aren't they, even when they're grown up? Well, I like to think that. I'm sorry for these questions, but I want to ask if your son gave any indication that he was in some kind of trouble. Financial, political, or did he express concern to you about someone or a group? If you can't answer now, don't worry. You can call me any time if something occurs. Can I leave you with my card?" He looked like he'd been hit by a tram, the father. I saw this look once outside the central train station in Oslo. A man, talking on his phone, walked into the path of a tram. It was slowing down to pick up passengers, but he was knocked to the floor anyway, and he lay there, still conscious, but with an expression of numb incomprehension on his face. This is how this father looked at me that day. And not a word was said about his boy, but as I was leaving, a note was delivered through the door. The posten was holding an item of mail for his son due to insufficient postage. A small thing, really, but it started the father crying. Okay, so the posten was holding around 30 letters altogether, all written by the victim's mother and sent from her home in Srebrenica, which is where the family grew up before the son got a job here in Oslo. The translation of the letters showed the mother's concern was about his father, who was increasingly furious about what he saw as his son's betrayal at leaving them. The father had then sailed to Oslo in his boat and taken his boy out in it just for a conversation. At some point, the son realised his dad was trying to whisk him all the way home, and the boy dived in the water in desperation. The father dived in after him, but the boy wasn't a strong swimmer, and he was overwhelmed by the cold. The father believed the son preferred to drown than go back home. So I think you were right after all, Mikkel. The father was distraught. Couldn't bring his son back to his mother like this. So he took him to the nearest island and left him with his arm pointing south. Not to Norway's enemies. He was pointing to home. He went back to his son's apartment and just sat and waited for someone like me to arrive. In trying to avoid losing his son, he made it happen anyway. It was like Bergman said, fear brings what it fears. Not a bad way of putting it, for a Swede. Hi, it's Annika. Yes, I'm fine. I'm wondering if Dad is home. Be good to talk to him. I know he missed my birthday. He's missed the last 20 birthdays. I just thought it would be a nice thing to do before I end up flinging myself into the Sound. No, that's a joke, Mum. I'm saying it'd be sensible to start a conversation.
Will you look at me? Take a good look at me and tell me who it is that I am.
There's a phrase that I like very much, especially as a detective, and that's the phrase, to fathom it out. The English have it too, and I think that's because the sea in sailing is part of both our cultures. Perhaps we donated it to them when we invaded. I don't know. Either way, I know I read it in my Agatha Christie books as a teenager. It was something Poirot liked to say, or one of the other ones, the old ladies. But it's a nautical term, and it has a special place for me because there was a sounding line on my father's fishing boat, and like all sounding lines, it was marked out in fathoms. He didn't need to use it because he had modern sonar equipment, but it made him feel reassured as he knew that if his electrics failed, he would have an antiquated system to fall back on. And I liked this rope too, and I would ask my father to take a sounding. So he would tell his leadsman to lower the sounding line into the water, and he would call out the depth as he read it off the line, and I'd know how deep the water was below us. The line was marked out every other fathom, and I liked to count with him. 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, 11, 13, at a depth of 6 fathoms, when the line was halfway between 5 and 7, and at 36 feet in depth, I would call out the words, "Deep 6!" It's a resonant depth for sailors, as something thrown overboard at deep 6 is difficult, if not impossible, to recover. It's past the point of no return. It's why burials at sea require a depth of deep 6. I suppose in my father's day on his fishing boat, without specialist diving kit, it would have seemed impossible to get anything back from deep 6. But in the Oslo police, we have much more stuff, lots of good kit, and Lars, the police diver, is very good. Very strong. And so it's been fairly easy for him to retrieve the coffin from deep 6 in the Oslo fjord.
This is Detective Stranded. We've got the crate from the Sanabukta inlet, and it's been winched onto the boat. I was thinking we could just open it now, because it might not have anything nasty in it. It's not a conventional coffin shape, so it might just be full of, I don't know, aquavit. In which case, I could bring it straight to the office. Hello? Are you there? That was a joke, okay? The thing about the aquavit, give me a break. Hey, Lars! Am I not allowed to joke in the police department anymore? Because I think I'm pretty funny. Okay, Lars is shaking his head at me. I'm guessing that means I'm not that funny after all. Fine, I'll bring the crate in. I'm not having much fun these days, you know that?
Sanabukta is an inlet branching out from the main body of the Oslo fjord, through which it is connected with the Skagerrak and North Sea. Though it's pretty lightly populated, the Østfold train line runs along the mountain and overlooks the fjord. And a passenger on the train was glancing out of the window when she saw a big box being pushed into the water from a boat. Something about it felt wrong to her, so she pulled the emergency cord and stopped the train. The train company wanted us to charge her for doing that, as the emergency wasn't on the train itself, but she was in a very agitated state and we were able to smooth things over. It took me 2 days to find the box, and there were points when I thought the woman on the train must have been mistaken, or was looking for some drama in her life. After all, anyone riding the Østfold line must want to spice things up from time to time. But her instincts were right, and when we opened up the box, we found inside a dozen rocks. And with them, we found the body of a man.
So the rocks were about the size of my fist. There were 6 of them. They were quite smooth from the water and were grey and were your basic rock, basically. We've tried to contact their relatives but have yet to turn up any leads. There are some pebbles in the lobby looking upset, but I think they're attention-seeking. Okay, come on, I'm being light. You're my detectives. Shouldn't be such a tough crowd. So to the victim then. He's in his early 50s, and he was found with handcuffs on his hands and shackles on his feet. The preliminary autopsy report concludes that the cause of death was drowning, but there are abrasions over his body, perhaps as a result of struggling in the crate. He ate around 2 hours before his death, and there is also alcohol in his blood. According to the autopsy report, it was quite a big lunch too, so perhaps he was out celebrating. No matches yet on missing persons. We need to find out who he is, and we need to find the boat which took the crate out to sea. If you could prepare yourself for being more open and receptive to my jokes at moments like this, that would be helpful for me. Apparently we don't laugh enough in Norway, and I'm a patriot, and I wish to do my bit.
There was a comedy club I went to once, near the university in Oslo. It was having an open mic night, and I needed to laugh. I'd been for dinner with Lars, and he'd said something about laughter not being sexy, which was why he didn't like funny women. But I'm a funny woman, I said. He said, no, I wasn't a funny woman at all. I was pretty angry, and he got awkward and said it was fine that I wasn't funny because it meant I was sexy. But I stormed out anyway and found myself in this club. And without thinking it through, just asked the guy if I could do 5 minutes. He saw that I was a novice, and he was proud of his club, and the last thing his clientele needed was a punchy woman with beer on her breath. So I flashed him my badge and told him that I was insisting I took a slot, in the name of the law. I had tales from the murder squad, which were really funny, bit dark, maybe, but they made me laugh. A kind of mirthless laugh at the human condition, sure, but it was still technically laughing. He did a really good job of talking me down, actually. He said there were no slots left tonight, and it would be a shame to bump a kid off the stage who'd waited their turn nicely. But if I wanted to come back next week, he'd be happy to put me on. I said, "Do you think I'm funny?" He said, "Well, we'll find out, won't we?" Hi, Lars, this is Annika. If you're there, could you pick up the phone? Okay, so you're not there. Or you might be there, just deciding not to pick up. Right, well, anyway, I'm at the harbour now, and I've just talked to this busker who said a boat called the Hawper was moored up on the afternoon in question, and there were 2 people having a blazing row on it. 2 men, both quite drunk, and he thinks he saw a crate on the deck, but he can't be sure. The boat set off, and he hasn't seen it since. So could you check the boat registrations for Hawper? Then perhaps we can meet up later, because to prove you wrong about me not being funny, I'm doing my first gig at the... Okay, so a man needs to have his answer phone settings long enough so a girl can ask him out to a comedy club. This is what I think. There are about 330,000 motorboats in Norway, 45,000 sailboats, and 245,000 other things. Dinghies, canoes, or windsurfers. 1 in 7 people in Norway own a boat, but it's a woefully short boating season, only May to September. The rest of the time it's just too cold. Most of the waterways are frozen during winter, so lots of these craft are moored up or in garages or private lakes or tied up on jetties. There's been a free boat registration scheme since the 90s, but so far only around 40% have registered. It's not exactly a needle in a haystack, but someone who's hoping to find that the boat they're looking for is owned by one of the conscientious 40% needs to be either lucky with her paperwork or to actually stumble across the boat itself during the course of her Sunday sail by the island of Hovedøya. Which is what happened to me, if that wasn't clear.
Hello? Anyone on board? I'm Annika Stranded. I'm with the Oslo police. I don't have my badge because it's Sunday. But, you know, honestly, it's true. Hello?
Okay, so the boat is a Norlan, an old type of fishing boat, but which is popular now for leisure sailing. The sail is struck and the anchor has been dropped, but there's no sign of anyone on board. I can see a few bottles lying around and some scratches on the deck. What's unusual about the Norland boats is that they have a ballast system where dozens of rocks are placed at the bottom of the boat to keep them weighted down. I would wager the rocks found in the crate were from this type of boat, if not this exact boat. Meanwhile, there's a little Mary Celeste thing going on here. While the forensic team came and looked over the boat, grumbling because of interrupted lunches with families or Sunday drinks, or both, I walked around the island of Hovedøya, and because I am so pure and silent and monkish, ask anyone, I had my coffee and cake in the ruins of the Cistercian monastery, and my mind drifted to my comedy routine. I think the monks would have approved, or at least broken their vow of silence to crack a laugh. But nothing funny was coming, and then the forensic team called me back to the boat. Seems they'd found the owner, and he was tied to his own anchor, with his body weighted down by rocks from his own boat. And that certainly killed the laughs. Okay, so here's another. A man got this... Sorry, I'll start again.
A man has got this act that he really wants to perform because he's been a frustrated performer since childhood. And it's an escapology act inspired by Houdini. But he needs to practice it, so he persuades a friend to take him out on his boat, shackle him with handcuffs, put him in a crate, and push him into the fjord as a trial run with no one watching. Now, the friend isn't too bright, but is a sweet soul, and though he's reluctant, they've had a few drinks, and he gets caught up in the idea, and before long, the friend is shoving the crate into the water and hoping for the best. Seconds pass, and then minutes, and after about a quarter of an hour, the friend realizes the act hasn't been a success. As it happens, there is an audience for this, a woman on a train on the Oslo line. Anyway, the guy drowns. Of course he does. He didn't practice enough. And the friend can't wrench the box free from the deep because it's gone deep 6 and there's no getting it back. So he sails away in despair and ends up near the island of Huvudaya, where he ties himself to the anchor of his boat and drowns himself too. I'm here all week.
I would make it a routine, of course. Not in the police code of conduct, and in the end, I cancelled the slot. Instead, I took Lars to the horse races. I thought he might get a kick out of it. Yes? A kick? Horses? Anyone? Okay, forget it.
Will you look at me? Take a good look at me and tell me who it is that I am.
Sound waves are oscillating at a rate of 20,000 hertz. So frequent that it's above the normal hearing range for humans. Certainly above mine. I went to a rock gig at the weekend and I can hardly hear anything anymore. This is ultrasound. Not the band. The band was called Jättesorg, and they were so loud I actually vibrated. No, the ultrasound is the 20,000 hertz of oscillation. It was used by the Navy during the Second World War to detect submarines. The transducer sent waves of sound through the water, and when they encountered a solid object, part of the beam was reflected back and it created a picture. I first came across ultrasound when my father got very excited about its use to find schools of fish. I don't think it worked very well for him, though. Perhaps he got a cheap version off some disgraced naval commander, and so in the end he went back to using his instinct to find the fish. Then he went out of business. So much for instinct. I think I inherited it. For me, today's experience of ultrasound is in the form of an echocardiogram, and a cardiologist is looking to see if there's something wrong with my heart. Well, I don't need 20,000 hertz of sound frequency to tell me what's wrong with it. It's basically broken.
So the body was found in a seat in the last carriage of the metro, line 1, in the direction of Frognerseteren. The train got all the way to the final stop without anyone noticing anything because the victim was propped up against the window and looked as if he was asleep. It was only when the station guard tried to wake him because the train was returning to Oslo that the discovery was made. Mikkel and his team are still on the train up at the station and will report back later. The victim's name and address are on the board. So, Frederick and Katrina, I want you to talk to his family, and I'll go to his workplace. I'll take, I don't know, perhaps Tur? Are you free? I mean, it's fine if you're not, just whatever's easier. I'll go on my own if you're already working on something. Welcome to the team, by the way. You'll find us very friendly here in the investigation service.
What an awkward mess. I got jeers at that, of course. I deserved it. And poor old Tur blushed as well. But it made sense to take him. The victim was a construction worker, and by all accounts, Tur had that thing where he can talk to manual workers man to man, because he's been in the trade himself a bit, working his way through college by laying bricks or something, and they open up to him. Construction workers don't open up to me. I talk like I know what it's like to be on top of a crane or dig holes in the road, and I don't pull it off, and they see it. So that's where Tur comes in, for that kind of easy camaraderie. And not at all for the reason that he's got lovely big hands and curly hair, and he makes me laugh.
Sorry, I'm at the construction site. I was saying it's where the victim was employed. He was quite a popular guy, it seems, lots of jokes, but he wasn't that good at his job, apparently. Didn't know how to do some of the basic stuff. He once hit a power line which blacked out a quarter of the city, so he was borderline useless. But the boss of the company wouldn't sack him. His workmates don't know why, as the boss is quite ruthless normally. The victim might have had some hold on him. Tur is still talking to them, and then we'll come back to the office. No, not via a bar. It's too early. And besides, Tur's a married man, and I wouldn't anyway. I'm not even sure he drinks. I'm going to stop talking about this.
But we did go to a bar. Tur wanted to go through his notes, and I wanted to look at his face and talk about his life and be close to him. I know my dad would like Tur. Perhaps that was part of the attraction. I remember as a teenager bringing back to the house these musicians or poets or tortured self-harmers who I'd defiantly announce were my new boyfriends, and if my dad didn't really like them, or was bored by them, or annoyed at their impracticability, then it would confirm that I was different to him. But I didn't really like them either, if I was honest. The ones I really liked were solid, confident, and knew themselves, and weren't afraid of my emotional stuff, but strong enough to know how to handle it. I never brought any of those types back to the house. I'd had years of therapy by the time I admitted to myself that was the kind of man I liked. And by that time, of course, most of them were taken.
Mr. Nilsson? Mr. Nilsson, it's the police. We just want a word about one of your employees. Your secretary said you'd come home, so we know you're in. It's not a big thing, we just want to ask a few questions. It would be boring to go and get a warrant, but it's quite easy, and I don't want to smash up this lovely door.
He didn't appear. And it was all bluster about the warrant, so we went back to his office and looked through his desk and through his personnel files, because we thought we should check the idea that it might be a blackmail situation like the men at the construction site hinted. We didn't find anything that would suggest such a thing, but we did discover a few other things about the boss's life. That he was born in Denmark, but moved to Oslo as a child, that he'd gone to the university in this city and done a degree in civil engineering, that he'd visited Russia 6 times in the last year, and the victim had been on each trip too, that he'd married, but was a widower, and the clincher, that the victim was his son.
Here's an interesting fact for you, Tur. Polonium was discovered by Marie Curie. Did you know that? And she named it after her native land of Poland. Poland was under partition by the Russians, and it was her hope that naming the element after her own country would publicise its lack of independence. Of course, it's mostly known as the element which killed the Russian spy in London, and also our victim, of course. But it's an interesting fact, isn't it? It says something about belonging or identity. Tur, are you having doubts about this trip?
He was having doubts. He'd agreed to come with me to Solstrand again, which was where the boss had apparently been sighted, but which also has a lovely hotel overlooking the mouth of Oslo Fjord. And I wanted to take Tur there in my boat and do forbidden things with him. And when we didn't find the boss, we did indeed do forbidden things. And they were blissfully forbidden. And once they were done, so his regrets came creeping in. His guilt. My guilt too, of course. And my chattering about the chemical toxin polonium was the only way I could think to pass the long boat trip back to Oslo. In the end, he told me to drop him at Moss, and he would get a bus home. And that's what he called it. Home.
Don't be alarmed. My name is Annika Stranded. I'm from the Oslo police. We're just canvassing anyone who might have been on this same train at this time 2 days ago. As you'll have read, there was a crime committed aboard, and we're asking people if there was anything they remember. My colleague, Tur, is giving out cards if something occurs to you later. There's a number for me, direct, but also a number if you just want to leave a message anonymously. Okay, thank you for your cooperation.
Tur couldn't look at me as he was handing out the cards. And the next day, he wasn't in the office at all. He'd asked for a transfer somewhere, I think, into dog patrol or the reindeer police, I don't know. And so I had the office to myself, and I worked late and kept an eye on the phone messages and on the reports from the teams who were looking into all the other aspects of the case, and I was drinking coffee and then alcohol and pinning things on the wall and making leaps and jumps and connections which at the time seemed sound, but probably weren't.
Okay, so let me explain the thing I've got here. It's the picture, as I see it, of the victim's movements the week leading up to his death, and also the picture of his father's movements in the same week. And also, okay, it gets a bit confusing round here, a picture of all those people who I believe to have got on and off the train as a result of checking the CCTV cameras at those stations that have them. And it's not all of them, so, you know, it's not complete. But it all points to the father having murdered his own son, having discovered he wasn't his son after all. We got this from DNA tests from the victim and from the father's medical records. So my theory is that he brought the son up believing he was his own. It's quite common in Norway, as you know, and then discovered he wasn't his son. And this fact, compounded with the son being useless at his work and possibly connected to organised crime from the Russia trips, see this chart over here, made the father realise he'd sacrificed his life for nothing on this boy, and in a rage, he killed him with polonium on the train to from Norrseteren. Okay, this is Nora. She's Tur's replacement, who, as you know, has moved to another department. Okay, so where was I? Actually, could someone take over? I'm feeling a bit... Could we open a window?
And I thought I was going to pass out. My heart was racing and I was feeling clammy and sick, and I went out into the corridor and I did pass out. And they brought me here to the hospital, where I complained of pains in my chest, and they passed sound waves through me. And it was the place where 2 discoveries were made. The first was that the father was innocent of the crime. Not only did he have an alibi for when the murder took place, but was as mortified about the death as any parent would be, and in his grief had taken prescription drugs which had made him bedridden for 2 days. I've been taken off the case. Seems a survey of my investigative methods has revealed unusually frequent accusations of the victim's fathers. I'll need a review when I'm better. But the organised crime connection was sound, and the case has gone up to Kripos, which is where Tur is now stationed, as it happens. And the other thing I discovered is that the ultrasound has turned up nothing wrong with my heart at all, but it has revealed a little beating heart of a child, which has, in its own tiny way, started growing inside me. And the ultrasound that I cannot hear uncovers a sound that I can. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum.
Feel that, little chick? That's how your mother handles a boat. There's no one better in Norway. Annika Stranded! I'm with the Oslo police. I think you're going to have a lot of fun.